welcome to Wellness Wednesdays for Leadership in STEM. It feels so good to say that, and I feel like my wellness message feels so much more aligned with what I want to get out of this platform. So thank you so much for joining me. Today we'll be chatting about owning your career, self-advocacy at work, and self-care for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging with Sydney Hamilton. Black Engineer of the Year 2021 Legacy Award winner, Sydney Hamilton has been featured on CBS's Mission Unstoppable, in Marie Claire magazine, on NPR's Wow in the World, and across the Boeing Company for her innovative contributions to the aerospace industry. She is an if-then ambassador for the American Association for the Advancement of Science, which is the AAAS, to inspire youth to pursue STEM fields. If-then's mission is to inspire young girls, especially of color, to be exposed to all of the amazing opportunities in STEM. Sydney is an Aerospace Structures Stress Manager at Boeing in Long Beach, California. She provides leadership for a team of incredible structural analysis engineers who support multiple programs in satellites, commercial aircraft, airplane repairs, and aircraft modifications. Prior to that, she was a mechanical design engineer leading a cross-functional team developing satellite reflectors. As a passionate advocate for recognizing the power within diversity, Sydney founded Boeing's Generations Southern California Employee Resource Group, dedicated to improving workplace culture across the company's rich multi-generational talent pool. Sydney brings out her passion for STEM education through her partnership with the nonprofit organization Dramatic Results. Serving as president on the board of directors, Sydney has championed the success of extracurricular programs designed to bring STEM through art, or STEAM, into the hands of undeserved youth. Sydney received dual degrees in Mathematics and Aerospace Engineering from Spelman College and the University of Michigan, respectively. So I'll be inviting her on now. Okay, just waiting for the request to work. Okay, just trying to get Sydney on. Let me see. There we go!
Okay,
Hello,
like,
welcome!
Log back on, because I know technical difficulties.
Yay, thank you so much for being here. I'm great, so much better now
me.
that I'm talking to you. For anyone joining in from your audience, I'd love to take a moment to quickly introduce myself. Hello, everyone. I'm Ricky. I'm a graduate student at Georgia Tech, and I'm an international student in aerospace engineering. And I've used wellness and these practices to really shape what I can hope and aspire for within this industry, which is just a really challenging place for someone like myself to fully thrive in. And so I'm just really excited to introduce this new series because very recently I've learned that my definition of success is both the mindset and the wellness practices, and to be able to do that every day. So I measure my success each day by kind of doing those practices, but then also for it to culminate into a leadership position like yourself, like across so many different areas. And so I have these chats every week, and I'm just so excited to have you on. And if you're ready, I'd love to jump into some of the questions.
Absolutely.
Yay, okay, so the first question that I have is, I've given everyone your longer spiel and just your official bio, but I would love for you to tell me who you are in a sentence that could be like catchy or descriptive or colorful or something unique that maybe I haven't shared already.
So I'm an adventure junkie who's making the world a smaller place. Would
I
be
love
pretty
that. I
much
have
how I,
goosebumps.
because like I love trying new things. Like I was just telling someone, I was literally just on the phone. I'm excited because I'm going to become an aquanaut, which we can talk about that in a little bit because I'm
Yes.
scuba certified. But I am working on satellites. So the way that we're even staying connected now, and quite honestly, for the past year and a half, how we've stayed connected, helping to keep us connected that way. And then physically getting on an airplane to go see a loved one. It's like, to me, I feel like I'm making the world a smaller place and keeping people connected with what I do. But at the same time, I'm also the one that's jumping out of a perfectly good airplane. I know a lot of people are like, if that airplane works, I'm not jumping out. However, I was like, gotta try it at least once. So I love going on adventures. I love the outdoors. And a big one that's not in there would be STEM advocate, just really making it accessible to everyone and really seeing how STEM is in every walk of everybody's life. Even when you think about the dancers and the shapes that you're making, there's geometry in that. You know, when you're doing pottery, again, going with the shapes, understanding sizing, fashion, architecture, like everything, scuba diving, very mathematical. Like you have to know how to get these numbers quickly, knowing about your oxygen. Like there's just so much STEM in everything. So I try to make it fun and accessible to people as well.
No, I love that. And that's such a beautiful thought. Like, that's such a great tagline. So, thank you so much for sharing. The next question is, why did you choose the STEM path you did in making the world feel smaller for others? How did you decide you wanted to be here?
So ever since I was a little girl, I've always wanted to fly. Like I would stand outside with a blanket tied around my neck, arms straight out, and once in the ready position, I would try to take off. While I may not have actually ever launched from the ground, my parents would always say, Sydney, what about a rocket or an airplane? And I was like, no, I want to fly. But not once did they ever tell me that I couldn't fly. And so I think that that just always stuck with me. My dad, like, positively brainwashed me because he'd be like, that's my little engineer. Every time I did like a science experiment or like anytime I did any type of work that was like tinkering, my dad would definitely be a big encouragement, and my mom just always helped me believe in myself. So that's a lot of surrounding of how I got to where I am, and so it just made sense that I'm in the aerospace industry because I'm flying just a little bit differently
Yeah,
than I originally imagined.
no, absolutely. And I guess my follow-up question to that is really, how has your combination of schools and career pivots helped to manifest that interest? And this is really for some of the younger listeners who are maybe in high school who know that there are many avenues to get into aerospace engineering and that may not necessarily entail studying aerospace engineering. So if you could tell me a little bit about your combination of degrees, why you chose the schools you chose. I think that's really valuable.
Yeah, so I think there's no wrong or right way to pursue any sort of STEM career because you can get there so many different ways. Like in the aerospace industry, whether you're a mechanic and you're going to a trade school, or you're going to engineering and getting your master's degree, or maybe just getting your bachelor's, you could also just get your math degree. I just happen to have math and aerospace because I love math. I feel like it's the universal language of the world. Everyone speaks numbers. Everyone speaks money. That's how I know
Yeah.
everyone speaks numbers. So I really enjoyed that. And then I just went into what I actually originally wanted to do was biomedical engineering, but I realized I was more interested in the law portion of it. But I am not a big, I'm not great. My memory, that's why I like equations because you can derive them if you forgot something. So like
Hmm.
to me, that felt more comfortable. And I was like, maybe biomed isn't the direction I want to go in. And I've always loved flight, and I was a little scared to go into it, but I did, and it's been such a fantastic experience. But for schools, I went to Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia. It is an all-black female school. It is the first school in the United States that Black women were allowed to go to, and it, like Oprah has a building there. Stevie Wonder's daughter was in my class. Like, it's just like a lot of prominent Black people went to this school, and it was a school that I knew. It was in the South, which I'm from the South originally, just not the strong accent, but and it was a wonderful experience. It made me comfortable with who I am. I think I didn't grow up in that environment, and I was one of the onlys in my elementary, middle, high school. And so to actually feel that connection, really be in classes that are focused on like my heritage and make me just proud to be who I am, I think that that was essential in just being confident. Not to say that I'm confident all the time, but definitely helped me feel comfortable in my own authenticity. And then University of Michigan, an incredible school, got into their
Just like a no-brainer.
it was like, got a scholarship, so that also, that speaks to, because I was like, okay, all right, maybe I can be cold for a little bit. And that was great too, because I got the technical expertise and the technical background that I really wanted to have going into my first engineering job. So from there, I got hired at Boeing. So I think there was definitely a lot of build-up, really understanding what I want to do, but also being flexible enough to know, change if you need to. If you get there and you try something and you absolutely hate it, please don't stay there, because then you're going to hate your job, and then you're going to get stuck, and then you're going to restart later, or have that same anxiety when you have to reinvent where you might want to be. I think the big thing in college is don't be afraid to change. And even after college, you're receiving so much new information all the time. It is okay to say, you know what? I changed my mind. We change our mind all the time. So like, especially if you're justifying and finding things that you're passionate about, absolutely pivot, because that's a good thing. That means you're growing.
No, I love that. And I think that takes such a major pressure off of our backs, because it's already really challenging being at the intersection of so many identities in these spaces, and like oftentimes not seeing folks around us who look like us.
For sure.
And so if something doesn't feel comfortable, I think sometimes there's this responsibility to not quit or like see it all the way through. But I think it takes a certain amount of introspection or just like understanding of oneself to understand like if that meets your goal or not, or like if it serves you better to pivot, and like maybe like your breakthrough is just like right around the corner and you need to kind of like go through that.
Absolutely. And I love what was said in the comments, iterate on your goals and dreams. We're comfortable iterating in so many different areas of our lives, even when it's like, what school am I going to? We go here. Okay, well, now where am I going to move to? Am I going to move home? Am I going to move to a new place? Like, we're okay with these changes, but those are iterations in your life, and you're growing and you're changing. So it makes sense that as you grow and you change, that your desires, your wants, your passions will also change with it, with those experiences.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I can just tell that like people listening now or later, like taking notes from what you're saying. So thank you so much for sharing. So kind of moving on from those pivots is really jumping into the topic at hand, which is owning your career. And the first question I had was when you had to choose between the divisions at Boeing or an opportunity at Boeing, well, one, did you kind of have an opportunity to select a specific area that you wanted to be in, or was it a general application? And what made you kind of choose that entry point that you had? Yeah, let's begin there.
Okay, so I did have a choice. There were a few, the way that Boeing did it, they brought us all into Seattle at the time, and we were able to talk to different managers, and you rank the managers and they rank you, and then the people that like you matched up with one with their EHI program, Accelerated Engineering Hiring Initiative. You kind of get to pick from there. So I picked the one that I connected most with the team and what they did, and design sounded really cool. But as far as picking, like, how did I know where I wanted to go in Boeing? I absolutely did not. Therefore, I did everything. So I started off as a design engineer working on some of the bigger planes. Then I moved to airplane repairs. So basically, anytime an airplane was on the tarmac, and they're like, we need to take off. What do we do? They're like calling my team. We're helping to make these repairs, helping to fix them. You get to travel sometimes to where they're at for like months at a time. From there, I went to 3D printing parts for satellites, and I never thought that I was going to be in space. I was like, I'm an airplane person. Like, I literally skipped the space classes in college and was like, I'll never be there. Then I ended up 3D printing advanced parts for satellites. So then I was in space for a while. Then I worked on satellite reflectors as a responsible engineering authority. And now I'm a manager that oversees airplane repairs, airplane design and stress analysis, and satellite parts. So it ended up working out because you find a space for yourself, right? I think we get to a job, we're like, okay, well, this is my job description, so let me stay here. But honestly, when you see this little box and you start building like some Legos, right? You just keep building on top of it and you make the box look exactly how you want it. And when you're doing what you need to do, they'll make a space for you. So just know that you get somewhere and you can kind of mold, because the company also wants you to be happy. Like, you're happy, you do good work. You do good work, the company's happy. It works out. So like finding those places and then exploring. And most of the time, and let me say, with a good manager, they're okay with you moving. The whole point, and I tell my team, I think you all are wonderful, and they are incredible engineers, let me tell you. But I want to see you move to where you want to be. Like, let's figure out what, I don't want you to leave the team, but I want you to go exactly where you want to go. So like,
right. So just
really
being open to, speaking up, and then also knowing that like when it's your time to be a manager, that's the message that you're conveying. It's like, please tell me your like biggest and like deepest like hopes and dreams so that I can help you get there.
Exactly. And it is definitely a trust thing. You have to build that with your team. However, managers, that is my expectation, is that you are helping each individual grow. That's why you are there, because you are passionate about the people. So that's what I want my team to always take away is, what do you want to do? And let me help you get there.
Right. I love that. And so I guess my follow-up from just the first question was, what were your plans and mindset when starting? Is it safe to say that it was just open-mindedness and like just being excited to start, or could you color that in a little bit for me?
Oh, I was incredibly nervous when I first started. Actually,
Okay.
I thought I was going to get fired on my like first or second day, because my manager actually wasn't in town. So I didn't realize he wasn't in town. They're like, after the first half of the day, go see your management team. And like, I was searching around. I had no idea where to go. Someone was like, no, you just go home. And then on Monday, my car battery was dead. So then I was late, and I was like, I'm tired. Like, this is my last day of work. Like, day 2, this is it. And, you know, you're nervous because you want to fit in. You want to know, like, what's the culture like? What all do I need to learn? I know so little right now. And this is an entire airplane. Like, how am I ever going to be able to design this whole thing? Which I had to realize, this is a team effort. You're doing your portion of it, and the entire team is working together. And when I say the entire team, it's the entire company working together to build this aircraft. So the weight is not all on your shoulders. So that was a relief. But I was so nervous. You go through the imposter syndrome a little bit of like, well, did they pick the right person? Like, what if I'm not smart enough? What if I'm not this? What if I don't fit in? What if I don't? And you go through these series of what ifs, which that's where I call my homegirls, where they can tell me, like, calm down, you got this. You're meant to be there. You're good. Okay. All right. Thank you. So nervousness is good, though, because if you're going into your first job or even any new job and you're not a little bit nervous, you probably haven't stretched yourself enough.
Yeah, and that's a really good quote, I think. And I think it really helps to burst that bubble, because when I introduced you, I'm sure like people were thinking, oh my goodness, like, who are they? Like, how can I even like be like them? Or like, it's so exciting to hear from you. But I think it, just sharing how you were nervous, I think helps so much because sometimes at like high achieving schools, it's almost like expected that people like know how to do the job before they even get there. But the whole point is that they teach you how to do things their way and they train you.
Absolutely, because you come in even, and I think that's been one of the things that I love to see now is someone that comes in like, oh, I already know how to do all this. And we're like, yeah, but do you know how to do it our way? Because
Right.
that's what we don't teach this outside in schools. We only teach it here. And it's like, oh, so you realize everyone comes in kind of on the same playing field. Sure, you may have some skill sets of things that you've learned, and that is super helpful. And I want to acknowledge that. However, I highly doubt on your first day at Boeing, you're going to know the Boeing processes. Like that, we don't expect you to. So like, I think that's the cool thing to see now is like, no matter what role you're moving into, you're going to have to learn, and everyone knows, all right, so for this amount of time, this person's really going to have to like hone in and learn and be trained. And that's our expectation for the questions and for you. If you're not asking questions, then I'm probably concerned.
Right. And those are all great things to know. Okay, so I guess so my third question in terms of owning your career is when did you realize that it was time for you to pivot from just your fixed wing interest into your 3D printing satellite interest? Can you kind of take us back into your shoes of when you had this certain identity? What was kind of going through your mind when you were maybe given this opportunity to move into something else that maybe didn't, as you shared, like fit into that identity at all for the longest time?
Really, I had someone, so there's a difference between mentorship and sponsorship, and I will identify the difference in a moment, but I had a person who was like, I want to sponsor you and I want to make sure that you're going in the right direction, because right now it seems like that was hard to hear. I think.
Oh, I think I lost you for like just that last sentence there. Could you repeat just like that last thing you said?
Yes. I'll just kind of start back. Had the sponsor, she wanted to make sure that I wasn't stuck where I was at, and she felt like I wasn't progressing like I should, and she pointed out to me that, hey, actually, I think you need to make a move, and I think I know a good move for you. And basically was like, here's the people you're going to get in contact with. You need to interview with them, and you need to do well in this interview because like I'm connecting you with them. And I was like, okay. And I was like super nervous, and at first there's a lot of resistance because you're leaving something familiar. I'm like, but I'm actually good at what I was doing. Like, sure, maybe it wasn't the best fit for me, but I'm good at it, like, and it works. But trying something new was really great because I don't think I would have gotten to where I am today without having those changes and experiences. But to circle back, a mentor is somebody that you're talking to all the time. There's somebody you go to, I'm having a bad day. How do I handle this situation? What do I do? I just need your guidance. And it's someone who's going to constantly guide you, and it's accessible, and they're fantastic. Everyone needs a mentor, especially at the very beginning. Like, that should be top of your action item list, is to find someone to mentor you through the culture, the work. I have like so many different mentors, and it's been so helpful to have people to identify for specific issues. A sponsor is someone who is going to be the one, and let me use a different word. Advocate or sponsor is a person that when you're not in the room, they're the ones that's like, hey, did you think of Sydney for that opportunity? Hey, did you know that Sydney has actually had experience here? Hey, did you know? So you may not talk to them as frequently. You do keep them up to date. However, they're the ones that are actively in those rooms with leaders, in those rooms with your peers, in those rooms with whoever, saying, making sure your name is brought into the conversation. And you can advocate for each other. So don't think that it has to be an executive. Don't think that it has to be, you know, the CEO of the company. It can literally be the person that sits right next to you that's like, hey, you know what? When I know how hard you work, and when I'm in that room, I'm going to make sure I put your name out there so that people hear it and they remember it, and then they start thinking of you. So having advocates and mentors is super important, both of them.
I think that's just like such valuable advice, particularly because I think folks don't know how to get sponsors or advocates when they're just starting out. And I think recognizing that it can be just the person sitting next to you and you can like both advocate for each other. It's just something that I didn't think of before. So thank you so much for sharing that. I think
Yeah.
especially, yeah, the young folks like just joining, like will find that so incredibly helpful.
Yeah, and a mentor can be an advocate, absolutely. However, I think if there's anything we've learned from commercials, repetition, repetition. If you keep seeing the same food commercial, all of a sudden it's like, maybe I do want pizza, like because you've seen it so many times. But the same thing with a name. They'll say, oh, what was the name? I think somebody said Sydney's name for something. Oh yeah, I have heard her name a few times, and they're just gonna remember that they heard your name, and that can be the difference between them selecting you and them not. It's just that they're familiar with your name. So yeah, you can advocate for each other, and that's the easiest way to start, is having your own personal board of directors. I know I have identified people who I'm like, I know these are the people that I can trust. These are some people that maybe I started with, but we are always looking for opportunities to say the other person's name. We keep in touch, and they're also the person that you can vent to say like, today was crazy, send help.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I think my last question for this is what should young gender minorities, particularly of color, be mindful of when communicating their career goals to their manager? So there's definitely like ways to communicate more effectively. So you probably heard a range of different aspirations. And so if you could kind of share, like, if there is a better or more recommended practice of like describing what you want, especially if that entails like eventually leaving the group that you're in to go somewhere else. How does a young person kind of navigate that conversation?
Okay, so one, make sure you trust your manager. That is the first and foremost. So building that relationship. But if you are, and most likely you will change groups, which I think most managers are like now accustomed to and really on board and understanding. But if you are going to change and you're going to have that conversation, make sure that the work that you are doing speaks so loudly for itself that it's not like you are looking to leave because you're just like, oh, this work isn't meaningful. But if you show like, I've enjoyed this, like this is great work. My 5-year goal is here. Can you work backwards with me to figure out how I can get to this 5-year goal or this 10-year goal? Because if your 10-year goal is to be the head of the director of testing and you're in repairs, I think that both parties will equally see that maybe there's a disconnect here. So how do we pivot and make that work? So I would start with a long-term goal and ask them, can we work this backwards to where I am now to see how I can get there? Like, what can I do successfully here in this role to help me get to this 10-year goal? And when you start working backwards as a team, I think both parties are comfortable saying like, oh yeah, you're going to definitely have to have some experience here, the experience here. Oh, actually, I might know someone to get you experience in this area. And it's not coming off as like, hey, this is cool, but I want to do something else.
Right.
So
Yeah.
starting
It's
off
like
with the longer term and working back would be
that
my.
is really helpful. That's really, really good to know, especially because I think some of the folks tuning in might be doing their internships right now, trying to understand, do I do another internship? Do I like where do I go? Like what do I say? Do I still want to leave this door open? Just
For
a
an
range of like
internship,
questions.
for an internship as well. So like we have an intern right now on my team, and he's actually not even doing my work right now because I was like, so you're going to split your summer up. We're going to have you do design this half. We're going to have you do stress this half. You're going to do an advanced concepts project for this portion of it, because I was like, I want you to be able to try all these different things. However, what you can say as an intern is saying, I love the culture of this company. I love these things about working here. This environment is where I see myself in the future. However, this city is close to my family. However, these are my goals, and I want to see, do you know if there are any opportunities evolving this in your group? And that person's likely going to say, oh no, but such and such group, maybe we can connect you. So really just saying how appreciative and showing that gratitude, especially as an intern, for the opportunity to be there, but also being bold enough to say, all right, awesome, I've tried this and I want to make sure this is the place that I want to be. So something else that I've been thinking about is this. I would love to have the opportunity so when I graduate, I can wholeheartedly be in the right place within this company. And I think most people say like, yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, that's what internships are for, to explore. And I think, like I said, not all managers are made equal, but I think most leaders are going to be really excited to see that you're exploring this early to really hone in on your passion, because you won't know your passion until you've actually tried it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so those are really all my questions for that topic. And my next topic is self-advocacy at work and rising in leadership. And so I guess my question to begin with that is, what were some of the specific practices you put in place to ensure that you're being heard or communicating clearly as a young engineer, and then now as a manager? So I guess with that, I think sometimes we hear like generic advice, maybe at a career fair or like at through the resources that are offered by universities. But when we get on a personal wellness level and we're talking about self-advocacy as a topic, there might be like specific practices you put into place to kind of like write things down before you read them, or like had someone check over it, or just like things that were Sydney. And I guess I want the Sydney answer instead of like the Boeing career fair answer. And just, yeah, I'm just curious as to what that might be.
So how do I advocate for myself?
Yes. In terms of kind of like telling your managers about how you wanted to be where you are now, and even I guess like being the sort of person that would have a sponsor, like showing up as the sort of person that would attract a sponsor and advocate into their life. What are some of the practices you put in to be that person?
So I'm a bit outgoing, so that definitely helps. However, some things that I did was in college, I got this advice, and when I first got it, I thought it was pretty lame. Uh, she said, Sydney, do exactly what you love to do, and you're going to be great. She's like, just keep doing all those things you love. And I was like, oh, come on. And I was like, I could have been a fortune cookie. Like that wasn't as meaningful, but I understood. So I have a passion for the community. So I give my all to that. Like that is what I do outside of work, is I'm reaching out, I'm seeing how can I lift other people up, and people want to be involved. They're like, oh, that seems cool. And I was like, hey, I'm building a room in this large area. Does anyone have expertise on how to build up 4 structure walls and make it into a bedroom for this homeless shelter? And then people jump in, and then they're like, oh, well, what's she doing in Long Beach? Actually, I'm down the street from there. And then people just start talking, getting passionate about it. Keeping people involved and engaged in what you're doing, but not in a boasty type of way. You know, I saw that there was a big disconnect with the different generations. You know, you often get this response of, okay, the young generation's entitled, the more experienced generation doesn't know technology, and we come in with all these assumptions, and it really hinders the workplace. So on my own, I started hosting little workshops, and people showed up because people were interested in the conversation and in the dialogue. You're going to do things in your own unique way, the only way that you're the only person in the world that thinks like you. So when you have an idea of how to execute something, like, it's important, especially like on the social employee engagement side of things. You're the only one that thinks like you. However, there are probably quite a few people that are asking the same questions and wanting to have that same discussion. Don't feel like you need to be backed by some huge organization. I literally did it as Sydney, and I was just like, hey, can everyone send out these flyers for me that we made? And people showed up, and we had the conversation. And I think that initiative, just not waiting for someone else to give me the go ahead, or not waiting for
Permission.
yeah, not waiting for permission. I say that lightly because sometimes make sure you're going through the right channels.
Right.
But,
Yeah.
but
like,
not waiting for permission to engage with others, I think is a big thing that stands out, because most people, and it is great because you need every type of person in the workplace, but a lot of people like to follow on with something that's already done. It's so much easier to critique something that's already established and then keep refining to make it better. But if you have an idea, just do it. Like, go for it and create it, and then people will give you feedback, and great. Next round, we have that iteration. We're going to improve. Next round, someone says, hey, did you think about making this aspect of it to it? And you're like, oh, that's fantastic. Add it on. And it just continues to improve. People are engaged. People are seeing that you're taking their feedback. And then leaders notice that. But I think at the core of it was not the attention of the leaders. I think you can kind of see when people do things just for attention, like, hey, just so you know,
yeah.
I did an hour's worth of extra work. Just wanted to inform you. And you're like, okay.
Good for you.
And then, like, the person that's like doing their own thing, and you're like, wow, you're doing great work. And they're like, oh, thanks, I appreciate that. Like, that's the kind of thing that actually gets you noticed, is like the things that you're like head down, really trying to get this right, really want to do this well. I think that's what's differentiated me personally.
No, I love that. That is such great advice. I know I'm gonna go back and like rewatch this and just write everything down in my journal. Okay, so I guess my next question is, what advice can you share to young gender minorities of color who are in spaces that are mostly homogenous in leadership? What tools, resources, or practices can help them remain grounded and be on track for leadership positions? Really, when they're the only ones that look like them and they've gotten an opportunity to be at a place and they're looking around and like no one else looks like them, but they also don't want to like let go of that opportunity and privilege to kind of have made it through, and yeah, just be that person to like bring more people in, but then stay grounded.
Okay, so you may not like this, but your presence rocks the boat. Therefore, anything else you do from there, you've already rocked the boat by walking in the room. So don't think that you're being any more disruptive than people have probably already seen. You know, I walked in on the first day and everyone was like, oh, so my name's Sydney, but depending on what generation you are, Sydney is often a boy's name. So Sydney Hamilton, they actually expected a white male to walk in the room, and then I walked in. So like, I rocked the boat, but that was literally my presence. So when I understood, like, no matter what, I'm going to make people shift one way or another. People are going to be supportive. People are going to be confused. People are going to have different emotions around it. So once you realize that making yourself smaller isn't going to change the opinion of the room, I think it allows a little bit of freedom for you to acknowledge. Actually, in my interview for Boeing, it was an all-male panel. And when they said, do you have any questions at the end, I said, what do women in leadership look like at this company? I said, just looking at this panel, I'm wondering, like, what are your plans moving forward to continue to diversify? And it really tripped everyone up initially. And then someone said, look, I'm gonna be honest, it's something we need to work on. You know, I'm glad that you have this interview. Like, there's been many other people and we're working on our hiring processes. Ask a question. Honestly, it's very innocent. And you can say, hi, yeah. So I was looking at the leadership and I was wondering what efforts are we putting towards D&I for making sure that we're getting the most diverse experiences, making the core decisions for this company. it's not aggressive, it's not angry, it's not pointing any fingers. It's just a matter of and then you can say, is there any way that I can help with that? Make yourself a part of the solution. That also puts you in line for leadership. It acknowledges that, hey, I'm not sure if we've been talking about the elephant in the room, but there's some people missing from this decision-making table, and I want to make sure that we're looking at this from all views so that we can continue to answer those challenging questions of this century. So my recommendation, ask a question, but also come with ideas and be a part of that solution.
Right, absolutely. And so my last question here really is when there are, or when there is that elephant in the room, have you ever experienced fatigue, in terms of balancing being on track for that leadership position and then also, having to ask those questions? Because you know that, you know, deep down, and I'm again getting like goosebumps as I say this, is like, I know deep down that it is my responsibility to like ask, but it is distracting from the technical work that I could be focused on that so many others are just focused on. But it's almost like we have to like stretch and expand ourselves. And you know, this kind of works into the self-care for D&I, which is our third topic. But I was wondering if you could, yeah, kind of share just your thoughts on that.
Yeah, okay. That's a big one. So I would like to moderately correct you and say it's not your responsibility to represent your entire community, because you are still an individual and you think like an individual. And I think that you add an extremely valuable perspective. However, you cannot take on the entire community's burden. Well, it's not even really the community's burden, but it's like the burden of everyone. So it is the responsibility of allies as well to speak up. And I think that that's becoming a more important conversation, which I really appreciate, because for the first time I had someone speak up on my behalf on something that was posted and it was directed at me. And I was just like, I'm just so tired. I was like, I can't even respond to this because I don't have the mental bandwidth to deal with this. And someone sent me a message and said, are you okay with me responding for this for you? And I was just like, I was like,
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Like, and that's what I would say. When you're fatigued, don't wear yourself out. If there is a friend that you can say, hey, can you just handle this for me? Or like, if you know there's an ally in the room, maybe give them the look like, okay, send them an IM on Zoom, like, hey, that made me uncomfortable. Or like address it at a later date and say, be honest, say, I was so tired that day that I didn't have the energy to address this, but I wanted to make sure I brought it to your attention in a place and at a time that you're comfortable. Because don't wear yourself out, because your presence is important, and what you're bringing to the table outside of just dealing with those things is important. So make sure that you're also taking care of yourself in that. And you can't change people. So there are people that are going to just be consistently the way that they are. And it would be up to a team effort to make that change. Like, you personally can't change that person. They have to want to change. And sometimes it is just letting go and saying, I understand how this person is, and not wasting your conversation for someone who's already so far on one side. But there are people who are just ignorant, and not in a negative way, but they just haven't been exposed to it, that you can actually use that energy and have a productive conversation.
No, I love that. And I think that leads to a really good personal inquiry for me, is like, again, like, what did I think my responsibility was, and what is it actually? Because in school, as young people, we're so like fired up. We're across all of these like leadership committees trying to cause change within the like school organizations that we're in. But that looks very different, I've understood, in the workplace. And so this was just like the perfect bit of advice I think I needed as I like graduate and go off into the industry later next year. So thank you so much. And so like
You're
really moving
welcome.
into the last topic is I think I already asked you about just like that responsibility. But I think there is so there's fatigue in having to, I think, answer those questions, but I think there's also the mental gymnastics you have to play in asking someone else maybe to like step
Yeah.
in or giving someone a look. So again, this is just like for entry-level engineers who like hear certain things, know that they should speak up because they are going through trainings and things like that, or listen to talks such as this. But I wanted to address that like nuanced fatigue of just the mental gymnastics of like, I know what I need to do, but even like thinking about it or seeing it is making me tired. And it might not necessarily be against you, but I think as we become more aware and as we educate ourselves, we become more, we pick up on things. And so you're, at least for me personally, I'm doing the mental gymnastics of, oh wow, like that was interesting.
And honestly, sometimes saying that's an interesting perspective, it is all you have to say to bring up the awkwardness of the room. Like, I let people sit in their awkwardness. Like, oh, that made you feel awkward? Well, that's probably how I felt. Like, I let people sit in their awkwardness, but also something you can do is when you're not fatigued, plan ahead. There are certain meetings that I know that there's a person, they're going to interrupt, they're not going to follow instructions, and usually I'm the one leading, so it becomes very exhausting. So ahead of time, I'm like, hey, do you mind helping me with it, like keeping the conversation moving forward? And it's like, yeah. And we might talk about it a week in advance. I'm like, are you still good? And they're like, yeah, I'm great. So sometimes I plan ahead. Like, I know that this is going to be a challenging meeting. I know I'm not going to have the capacity because I didn't have it last week. Like, said, I know my patience is short. So ahead of time, I'm going to ask you, hey, do you notice this? If you haven't, like, when you see this, can you help me? And most people are like, absolutely, yeah. Or like, oh, I had no idea that even bothered you. Like, yeah, I'll be happy to step in. Like, plan ahead. You don't have to do it in your fatigued moments. Do it when you're, and that's my big thing. Do it when you're not fatigued.
No, that is like brilliant advice, because I think people think of like what their actions should be in the moment. Or I think the worst is like when you leave a meeting and like something was said and you're like, oh, maybe that shouldn't have been said, or I should have
Yeah.
said something. So I think preparing for things in advance is such great advice, again, for younger gender minorities. Like, entering the field, they're just so excited to get to work on this technology that they don't realize how there might be these other layers before they can just focus on that work. And so, again, your advice has just been so valuable. Thank you so
I'm
much. I have
glad.
3 other questions for you.
All right.
Okay, so the first one is, what does success in STEM mean to you?
So success in STEM to me is creating a pipeline for more people that look like us. So my success is going to be a little bit longer term because I won't be able to see the fruits until later. And hopefully you see the impact that's been made by so many people that are working hard in the STEM advocacy space. And I would say, to however anyone's defining success, there is no wrong answer, whether your answer is CEO, nonprofit, or just having your own patent, which is always a goal of mine. But success is defined by you, not society. So try not to take the societal version of success and force that upon yourself, because the other side of that is like, societally, I should be married with kids and all these different things. But if you ask me if I feel like I've been successful, I've been incredibly successful and I'm so happy. So like making sure that you're understanding and in tune with yourself and what you want. And so my large scale picture is like, there's such a diverse pool of people going into STEM that we don't actually have to have this conversation anymore. A personal success, I mean, I guess continuing to grow in a space where I can actually bring people up. That was a big portion of wanting to go into leadership, was being able to bring in that diverse pool of people and saying like, we don't have any managers that look like this. We don't have any engineers that look like this. What about this? And just being able to be a part of that process to just make sure everyone's voice is heard.
No, absolutely. Okay, so my follow-up question to that is, what does effective leadership mean to you?
Um, Effective leadership. I mean, it's not the same. The first thing that comes to mind is servant leadership, which is like really being there for the people. Like, I think you're going to get your best work when you're really genuinely here for the people. And depending on what level you're at, again, going back to the CEO example, like, you have to care about your people, but you're the face of the organization. So like, you're managing like outwardly and probably your VPs inwardly. However, where I'm at, it's figuring out how I can best help each person, and how can I make your life easier? How can I remove roadblocks for you and not be the one that's creating them? And really understanding how I can make not only the individual but the team successful, and really taking that role of, sure, I'm your boss, sure, I'm the manager. However, like, I'm really here to support your needs and make sure that we keep bringing in work. So when I think about effective leadership, I really think of closer to like, what is my leadership style, and how do I think in being agile as well, like being flexible. You need to be able to adjust in the conversations, because you're not going to be able to communicate with everyone the same way. You're not going to be able to connect with people the same way. Or, you know, some people are like, hey, I want everyone's input. Someone's like, I need you to make a decision right now, and just being able to pivot as needed. So really, what's your environment that you're in, and using your emotional intelligence to figure out the best way to execute.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. And just a last question, which ties up everything, is, what does wellness mean to you?
Oh man, that's a big one. Wellness is really taking care of yourself. And I'll be the first one to say I can do a better job. Like, especially right now, because I have so many things go up in the air, things are juggling, and I feel like all the time my brain is like, which tells me that I need to take some space to like relax, calm, find my serenity and peace. And it's really recognizing yourself, staying in tune with yourself, and listening to what your body needs. Because sometimes you might be like, oh, I'm so tired. And if you can, take a 30-minute nap during lunch then. Like, if that's what you need, then do that. Make sure you're still executing in your job. And if you are feeling like your wellness is at a place where it's affecting your work, talk to someone about it. Whether that's your therapist or your boss. I have talked to my boss and said, I feel horrible because I have not been productive this week. I am so drained and I'm so tired. And he was like, that's okay. Thank you for letting me know. I was like, I just don't feel like I have done my best. And he's like, you know, we're in a pandemic. Like, a lot of people have been feeling this way. I'm just happy that you expressed it to me so that I can acknowledge in case anything is happening. So it's one of those things where wellness is being in tune with yourself and actually doing the things that you need. I think the bubble baths are fun. I think all those things are important and cool, but also like reflecting on yourself in places that, you know, here it was a mental block and I should have rested. But here was something that I did and something I need to continuously improve on, and recognize and revisit those places of improvement. I mean, none of us are perfect, but I certainly know that there's things that I can do much better. So, you know, I just try to revisit those. And I have friends that are my accountability partners that'll say, Sydney, tell me what your week was like. okay, yeah, you're tired, aren't you? And I'm like, am I tired? And I will say shout out to a whole bunch of my friends that have been online, because they're probably the ones that are going to call me afterwards like, okay, how are you feeling? Like, you need a break? You tired? You good? Okay, just checking in, just making sure. So like, I have a great group of people that care about my wellness for the times where I forget to.
I love that. Thank you so much. Those are all my questions, and I'm just going to listen to this so many more times to really write down and process everything that you've shared. And this just answered so many things that were on my heart. And I'm
I'm
just
glad.
so grateful for your time. Thank you so much for being here. I guess I wanted to say, do you have any like closing final thoughts or anything else that you wanted to say and you missed anything?
Um, I'll share a couple of my mantras that I kind of live by. So first is I never win, I either lose, or wait, I never lose, excuse me. I never lose, I either win or I learn. And that was by Nelson Mandela. And it's really reframing the way that we look at failure and saying that if you look at failure as a place of learning, then you will take away so much more. You'll be encouraged that failure isn't necessarily a bad thing, it's just a part of the process. And so I challenge everyone to revisit how you see failure, because you learn so much more from a failure than you do a success. Because a success, you're like, good, got it, next. Failure, you're like, uh-oh, what went wrong? How can I do this better? What went right? And you really reflect on it. So there actually are good points or places to like reflect and see how you can continuously improve. I say still I rise all the time, because you fall and stumble and trip, and you just have to continue to get up and believe in yourself and remind like your friends to like, hey, I just need a little encouragement. They're like, you got it, girl, you're amazing, you're the bomb. And I'm like, okay, I needed that little pick me up. See the world like an astronaut is something that I say, and what I mean by that is when you're in space, if you're on the International Space Station looking back on Earth, you're probably not thinking about, oh, I burned this toast, or was this person talking about me, like subtweeting me, like you're not thinking about all these little things. You're looking at like the work that you're doing and how you're impacting the world. Like you're looking back on your home and you're looking at things from such a big picture. And it reminds me not to get honed in on some of the trivial things that are happening day to day, but to back up and say, Sydney, is really not about you. Like there's something greater in each and every single one of our lives for our purpose. And you have to like back up sometimes and remember, like, again, you're important, you're unique, and like the impact that you're going to make is going to be, it's literally impossible to be like anyone else's, because there is no other you. And so those would be some of my takeaways, and to just enjoy the journey, explore, pivot, have fun with it.
All the stuff. I love it. And I'm just so like happy I got to do this. It's just genuinely such an honor to like hear your thoughts and like have
Oh,
you
thank
share all
you.
these things. That's just like a little bit longer than a Twitter thread or even an Instagram
Yeah.
post. So thank you so much for being here.
And thank you for having me. I appreciate the invitation.
Okay, so with that, I would love to close, and I'll be posting this as soon as we finish talking, so you can find it on my platform and share it and tweet it and do all the things. So thank you so, so much for your time. Have an
Thank
incredible
you.
evening.
All right, you too.
Bye.
Bye.